2 boys died after a gene therapy, but this family won't give up hope, on a Washington Post article. Now, this is July 26th, so this is very recent, yesterday now. By the way, I didn't even mention what date it is and what episode it is, but that's fine, that's good. And this whole article, I'm not going to read through this, because at the end of the day, we're talking about sick children here in this article. And I find it honestly distasteful for me to read their story and bang and just shoot back at this article step by step and talk about all the ideas and all the interests and agendas at play here. But I am going to talk about it some. But I just wanted to say that. So I'm going to summarize it generally. In short, 2 teenage boys have died during a clinical trial for a gene therapy. Now, these boys both received a gene therapy from Sarepta Therapeutics. Now, why are they taking an unproven gene therapy and being tested on? Well, it's because they both had Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So, it's this incurable disease where they progressively lose control over their muscles, so they can't walk, and the median life expectancy is 28 years old, right? So they don't have a normal life and they don't live for very long. It's very tragic all around. But 2 of them died after receiving this treatment. So the clinical trial has been paused. All the drug shipments have been called off. The stock plummeted, right? All this stuff crashed down. Now, Friday night, the FDA announced that it was investigating a 3rd death. So we've got 3 deaths now, right? I caught in this article that Roche, or Roche, I don't know how you say it, it's Roche. I want to make sure I don't gloss over that one, because this is one of these fucking evil companies. They sell this therapy overseas, and they stated that the physician treating the boy in Brazil, he assists the death as unrelated to the drug. So this 3rd death, Roche Pharmaceuticals, is quick to tell you that, hey, the doctor said it had nothing to do with us. And Roche, the pieces of shit scumbags. This is one of those multinational mega companies. This is who I'm talking about. But I wonder what it was, the cause of death, because we don't know. But I would bet that it's liver failure, because we know one of those other boys died of liver failure. And although it's not proven, we know what happened, because the virus used to transport the gene therapy into the muscle cells is likely to have triggered an immune response in the liver, Sarepta has said. They've said that, causing inflammation that led to liver failure. So Sarepta admitted to it, right? It's a virus used to transport the gene therapy into muscle cells. That's how it works. So you got a gene therapy, but that doesn't work. You can't just, it's not that simple. So they use a virus to get the virus to infect the cells, and that's how they get their genetic therapy in. And that rung an ominous bell to me when I read that, because that sounds like SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, aka COVID jab, aka whatever euphemisms you want to use. I'm not going to censor myself. I'm talking about vaccines. I'm not pretending that I'm not talking about them. And these piece of shit scumbags, they get to tell you what medicine is, and I can't tell you, right? Because I'm not qualified, because I haven't done the trials, right? So that shit just pisses me right off. But I point that out as we keep in mind, we just talked about lung cancers and genetic mutations, right? So now we also think about this viral pathway gene therapy. It seems to be there may be something to that, to those things being connected. Not accepting, or I'm not saying to accept or reject anything offhand, but just looking out for connections that are not yet made. So keep it in mind as we talk about genetic mutation. Now, this is the opposite of genetic mutations. They're trying to do gene therapy, right? So they are trying to change the body's genetic makeup for a different, so it's different, right? It's intentional. But something to think about how they do this. One happens, happens through a virus, the other one through some particulates. Don't want to say too much there, right? Because I'm going to keep it reasonable, but it's something to think about. But I did read this. The FDA approved Sarepta's gene therapy for Duchenne and later expanded it, despite clinical trials that failed to meet their main functional goal and concerns about the agency's own reviewers about its effectiveness. The extremely costly drug has been approved by the FDA since 2023. Andrew is part of a clinical trial testing the drug for a subset of patients who are unable to walk. Andrew is one of the boys that are the subject of this article. One of these is 3.2 million a dose. So this is one of these doses that costs, millions of dollars for one. And thus, the drug has brought in more than 1 billion revenue in just over a year. Okay. Now, one of these is called Elevitis. Elevitis is the name of the treatment. And Elevitis' path to FDA approval was contentious, the article says. In its first major randomized clinical trial, the therapy failed to show that the boys who received it performed better on a battery of physical tests than those who got a placebo. In other words, their shit didn't work. Like, it just doesn't, like, this is what happens in the fucking science pharma world. It didn't do shit in the first trial. Now, it was still approved. I'm sure in the second trial, if that happened, maybe this was the second trial, but I'm sure the second trial it did better, right? You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Because in the second trial, I'm sure they made the placebo not really a placebo, like they do with a lot of the vaccine clinical trials. And this is another thing about the Stanley Plotkin deposition, or you heard some of this stuff. And so cheers to my friend who told me this. By the way, you're invited to Soundpath. I better see you there. But my friend told me this, pointed me to this vaccine thing, and that was before I even got sick. So whatever. Now, I know I made this article sound like the article's criticizing the company. It's not. It's actually like the article's more lamenting the FDA's regulations. It's saying that the family won't be able to try these experimental treatments to save their boy, right? Because the clinical trial was stopped. So really the article is more like that. And this is a very common tactic in medical rhetoric. When it comes to light, whenever it happens that some medication is causing harm, right away what you get is these very emotional arguments, like visceral reactions right away. It's almost as if the writer of this article wanted to drag these fucking poor boys over in front of your face, put him right up to you and say, look at him. You want to take away the medicine? You want to take away his chance for life? You want to take that away from him with your, with all the shit you talk about, informed consent and safety? That's what it seems like to me. There's all this emotional arguments when I'm talking about like safety. I'm trying to make sure anyway, let's let that go, right? I don't want to get off track. So the answer is no. The answer is no. I don't think anybody should be even stopped from taking any drug, right? So just to restate my position, anyone should be able to take anything, experimental or otherwise. So while I do want to stop government and corporations from polluting the air and stop these companies from selling these toxic drugs and marketing them as safe, and I want to stop other unsafe things that are being, dispensed on a mass level, I want to stop all that. But I don't want to do it through regulation, because the only correct and truly long-lasting way to do that would be through an informed populace. Now, that's the only protection we got. Is like what we know. We can't rely on the nutrition facts on the back of the bottle or the freaking government's inspections to see if something is fit for our consumption. All we have is our own intelligence, our own level of information. But as an immediate stopgap solution, there's still one. I have one too. Why doesn't the FDA have a section that's recognized as unsafe but still available on the market, so you don't go to jail if you get it? It would be a thing where that's like use at your own risk. Why couldn't they do that? They do that with a whole bunch of other shit, but not medication, not food. Why do they have a control over food and drugs? Because again, this is why I'm doing an episode about health, because health is very important in the control of people. It overlaps with the control of resources. So they could do that. They could give the appropriate waivers and the appropriate, liability, waivers of liability. But of course that won't happen, right? The FDA ain't going nowhere, and they're gonna do things this way because the system is fucking crooked. And the FDA does not exist to be a check and balance and to be a watchdog over the predatory drug companies. No, they exist to shut down the competitors of these predatory drug companies. Like that's who they're really shutting down, especially anything having to do with natural solutions or herbal remedies. The FDA is a watchdog of that. They're not watching the big drug companies. They pay the big drug companies pay these people, just the same way that they lobby politicians. And there are plenty of books about those overlaps and those conflicts of interest. But as for the author of this article, Daniel Gilbert, or editors, right, whoever's involved, I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if this guy got $100,000 payment to write this article, because it's very well done. It's a very emotional article, without being like blatantly sleazy and deceptive. It's a good fucking PR move, because it doesn't present Sarepta as an angel. It doesn't look like he's writing their defense, but it has the effect. You can't even tell that bait and switch is being done here. But I can tell, I guess, and that's why my MIT hat better be double layer tinfoil. You know what I mean? Call me what you want. I'm just saying shit that makes sense. Anyway, my heart goes out to the children and their families.